Well, I'm excited to be here. And what I'm going to do today is kind of share a little bit of my history, my story. Landon mentioned that I started in pre-med, and we're all kind of at a crossroads in our life, aren't we? We're in college, we get there. To tell you my story really quickly, I started off in engineering, then geological engineering, then mathematics, and then exercise science, and then pre-med, and then I started a company. So you could still do it. Even if you don't know what you're going to do, you're all at a crossroads right now in your life. And I'm hoping today will give you some ideas on things that you can do to help to make sure that you find something that you absolutely love, which is what I have done. And the story is going to start off with a little baseball story. I started when I was 7 years old. I wanted to play baseball. I was a tiny little kid. And my dad would take me out in the backyard and he'd teach me how to play baseball, and he would throw balls to me, and I got up and I would get up to bat. They didn't do T-ball at the time. They would do fast pitch, if it was fast pitch for 7th and 8th graders. They would throw the ball to me and I would swing. And I struck out like every time for like 4 or 5 games. I struck out. And I can remember going to my dad and I says, "Dad, I am no good. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me?" And he said, "Son, keep swinging. Eventually you're going to get a hit." I'm like, "Okay, I can do that. So I got up to bat. My dad gave me a pep talk, and I'm left-handed. And so, you know, left-handed, you stand on the opposite side of the base of this one, and I swing like this, and I hit a ball, and I hit it clear over third base. I was a little slow on the swing. Hit it over the third base. I got on base, and I never got out the rest of the year. After that, I decided baseball was my passion. I wanted to be a baseball player. In fact, at 8 years old, I made the all-star team. And I said, I'm going to be a professional baseball player. And that was my passion. Then one day, something happened. And last day of school, 13 years old, I was going to be a professional baseball player. Kids do stupid things on the last day of school, right? Well, this was one of those stupid things. My friends and I got together after, and we started lighting firecrackers, and we were so excited school was all out, and we were throwing them at the wall and throwing them at things and blowing up pop cans and doing all those stupid things that kids do. And it was fun. We were having a lot of fun. And then we ran out of firecrackers. And one of my friends said, "Well, why don't my dad has shotgun shells in his gun cabinet. Why don't we get some shotgun shells out? We'll take the BBs out of the shotgun shells. Then we can tape a rock on the end of the shotgun shell, and then we can throw it against the wall, and hopefully the rock will trigger the primer and cause the primer to go off. And then we'll make some more loud bangs, and we'll blow some more things up." We were super excited. So we got these shotgun shells. We emptied all the BBs out. We put rocks on the end, and it wouldn't work. We couldn't get it to balance right, so it hit the wall. So one of my friends had a great idea. He said, "Let's get a BB gun. Let's shoot the end of the shotgun shell with a BB gun." And great idea, that's great. So we put the shotgun shell on a rock. Then we backed up about from me to you, and we said, "Okay, let's shoot this shotgun shell." We aim. All my friends took a turn. They missed. And then me, the lucky one, I go like this, bang, pull the trigger. Guess what? I hit the primer right in the middle of the shotgun shell. It exploded. But the problem is, it exploded and ricocheted the BB back into my eyeball. It went right in here on the left side of my eye, didn't go in the eye socket, went around the eyeball and went around my eye and lodged behind the optic nerve. And instantly I passed out. My eye was about this big. I thought, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Next thing I remember, my dad was running with me in his arms to get me in the car to take me to the emergency room. To make a long story short, not blind, but I lost all the central vision in my left eye because of this accident. And with that, I thought, holy cow. So like if I'm looking at you right now, I cannot see your red shirt, but I can see you and I can see you. I'm blind in the center of this left eye. Well, what does that do to a baseball career? What does it do? You no longer have depth perception, do you? You can't see how fast the ball's coming at you. You can't see it. I still tried to play baseball, struck out, again and again and again. I couldn't see the ball. I couldn't have the perception with one eye, only one eye. This was a really traumatic time in my life. And I was really very, very fortunate because I had a very good friend. This friend of mine right here, Richard Kim Miller. He's 10 years older than me. And he came to me and he says, why don't we try rock climbing for a while? I says, oh, that sounds like a great thing. And how about you turn into a runner? And I says, okay, I can be a runner and I can be a rock climber. That sounds like a good thing. So Kim and I started doing a lot of things together. We went rock climbing, we went hiking, we went running. Kim was really, really, really a good climber, and he taught me everything he knew. I lived very close to the Teton Peaks, and Kim and I would go, and we would like to go to the Teton Peaks and climb as fast as we could to be the fastest one to the top of the mountains. And Kim came to me one day and he says, Bryce, you're really fast and you're really in good shape, and because you're a runner, I think, Kim said, Bryce, I think that you need to set a record on the Grand Teton. And I says, what's that? And he says, well, you can be the fastest person alive to run from the parking lot to the top of the Grand Teton and back down again. I'm like, okay, that sounds cool. So I was at a place called the Cedar Rocks, which we have a second home in the Cedar Rocks right now. It's a climbing area. Any of you climbers in the room? Woo! Have you heard of Cedar Rocks before? It's one of the best climbing places in the whole world, I think. Our house overlooks this. But anyway, this would have been back in the late 70s. I was at the Cedar Rocks, and the guy who held the record for the Grand Teton, he was there. And Kim was always my supporter. He went right up to this guy and he says, Bryce is going to break your record on the Grand Teton. And I'm just like this young 18-year-old kid at the time. I'm like, kind of a little shy, and was kind of hiding behind Kim a little bit like this. And all the guy said to me was, good luck, kid. So that was all it needed for me. I decided, okay, that was my passion. So if you don't know what the Grand Teton is, here's the Grand Teton, the tallest peak, not the tallest peak in Wyoming, but the tallest peak in the Teton Range. To go for a record on the Grand Teton, it's 16 miles round trip and 7,000 feet vertical each way. So that means a lot of up and down. You start at a parking lot approximately right here. You run through here. You run up this area. You run up this canyon. It's called Garnet Canyon. You run up this snowfield here. Then you go up this ridge here, and then you transfer over to the other side of the mountain, and then eventually you summit the Grand Teton. So that was my goal. I'm going to be the fastest person. I'm going to break this guy's record on the Grand Teton. So I set out training. Now, granted, this is 1981 at the time, and look at my attire. Shorty shorts, cotton shirt, my watch. I never wore a wristwatch because I climbed so much that I always scraped up my watches, so I'd tuck it inside my shirt, and an old pair of Brooks Chariot shoes. Nobody at the time was wearing running shoes in the mountains. They wore hiking boots. And so they would see me like this, running around the mountains, and this is my training. There's the Grand Teton again. So I decided I was going to do it. It was one August day that I went out to set a record on the Grand Teton. This is a little look from, this is about the 6 mile mark. You can see how rugged it is. So you come right up this area, you go up through this scree slope here, and up this side of the mountain all the way to the summit. It's actually technical rock climbing. For those of you who don't know the Yosemite decimal system, it's a 5.4/5.5 as far as difficulty. Not super difficult, but when you get up there, this is what it looks like on the upper mountain. So the actual route, I ran all the way up through this, came up to the upper saddle, came across the belly roll, across the crawl, up through the chimneys, up the catwalk, up through the thing here to here. This took me, most people it takes about a half a day to do this section. This is where most people use ropes all the way to the top. But with me, I was in my shorty shorts and my Brooks running shoes and no rope. I was still young and crazy at the time. This is what it looks, that's the upper route. This is what it looks like looking over there. And this is what it looks like looking down. It's 3,000 feet of air. So it's a little bit on the scary side. So anyway, I started off at the parking lot. My goal was to make it to the 7 mile mark in an hour, and then make it to the summit in an hour, and then make it down in an hour. and I wanted to just blow the record out of the water. And so the current record was 3 hours and 30 minutes. And I said, I want to blow this out of the water. So I ran, I made it to the saddle in 1 hour and 13. And I was really mad because I was 13 minutes off pace. Then I went from the saddle to the summit in 53 minutes. So I made up some good time there. That last section that I was showing you right here, this took me 11 minutes to go from here to the summit. And then down climbed the whole thing back down again. And then I just ran like a madman all the way down. Then you came to these snowfields. I jumped on the snowfield at the top here, and I was in my Brooks running shoes and shorty shorts, and I skied on running shoes down this glacier. And people that saw me, they thought that I was falling. But I felt like I was totally in control because I was skiing on my running shoes. And then I made it down here, and it took me like a minute to get down this. And you can see the people hiking right here. So then I ran all the way down to the bottom. This is kind of what the trail looks like. So it's not really a trail. It's just kind of a crazy scree slope. This is an actual picture of me coming into the final at the very end that somebody took of me. And then this, I have to look over to my computer. This is the last 6 seconds. There was actually a film crew there from a local TV station, and this is the guy that had held the record before me, and this is the last 6 seconds of me coming into the parking lot. Uh-oh.
26th, it was Thatcher's turn, and he cut almost 25 minutes off of Kingsmark. A photographer from television station KID in Idaho Falls recorded Thatcher's last leg of the trip. To be a mountain runner...
So, that's my shoes, which I brought my shoes today, my Brooks running shoes. They were brand new, well, just had a few miles on them out of the box. And this was after one run. So this is what I skied down the mountain on, and you can see how I kind of trashed them. Cotton laces, nice wide cotton laces, and you can see how I blew out the sidewalls of them. But that was at the very end. So that was in 1983. I set a record, world record for speed ascent descent, 3 hours, 6 minutes, and 25 seconds. This record held for 29 years. And finally, a guy named, a runner in here, a mountain runner, a trail runner. Do you know Kilian Jornet? Kilian Jornet he's from Spain. He was sponsored by Solomon. I think his annual salary was $500,000 a year. He's a professional runner. He finally took my record down. So I was okay. It held for 29 years. So what did this do for me? Well, first of all, it allowed me to know that I was really good at something. It put me in a position where I was out there doing really hard things, and it brought some notoriety to me. Not that I was searching for it, I really wasn't. I just wanted to do it for myself. But prior to that, and you can see in kind of the theme behind my talk here is there's many things that happen to us in our life that we don't know why they're happening to us. I got shot in the eye with a gun. That was horrible at the time, but it got me into something different. My life was directed into something different, and that something different was very good for me. It gave me goals, it gave me passion, it gave me drive, it gave me a desire to do something. Almost at the same time, this is my grandma Pickett, and this is her sewing machine. She taught me how to sew on a sewing machine. And I thought, wow, that's kind of weird, but in my house on Sundays, we wouldn't do a lot of physical activities on Sundays, so my mom would say, here's some old Levi's and here's some old fabric, and you can go play on the sewing machine. I'm like, okay. So that's what I did. This is what my sewing machine looked like. And I'm really not that old, but this sewing machine is really old, and it's a treadle sewing machine, and that's how I learned to sew. So at the time, I was running in the mountains, and I set a lot of records in the Tetons and actually all over the world. This is my backpack. It's an old Camp Trails backpack. And this is what I would do. I'd put it on like this. I'd carry a jacket, a bottle of water, and I would run like this. So I made the straps just like this, and I would run like this so that it wouldn't flop all over my back. And then I would run, and I would get halfway up the mountain, and I would just be so parched there was nothing to drink. And I would say, okay, I've got to drink. And crap, I got to drink something. So I'd do this, and I'd take it out, and I'd open up the zippered pocket, and I'd pull the water bottle out, and I'd get a drink. And it's like, oh, that was driving me crazy because it slowed me down so much. I'm like, no, I'm trying to go for time here. That takes 3 minutes to get a drink, and that's time. So I says, there's got to be a better way. So that's where sewing comes in. So it was one Sunday afternoon. I got on the old sewing machine. I got some old Levi's. I sewed together a pack that I could wear on my waist that actually carried a water bottle so that I could get the water bottle in and out on the go, so that I could have snacks on the go. And I was able to sew something together that worked. And it worked really well. That's what I started using on my adventures in the mountains. It was shortly thereafter, fast forward a couple of years, I'm in college. I'm a competitive runner, competitive cross-country skier. And I'm in pre-med at the time. I went through all those major changes. I was in pre-med, and I'm like, worked at the running shoe store. I was a full-time student, and my parents were sending me $400 a month to live on because I couldn't do it by myself, and it was driving me crazy. I'm like, I don't want any money from my parents. I want to do it on my own. So I said, I had this great idea. I said, college kids start businesses all the time. Why don't I just start a business in college, and that'll help put me through college? And I'm like, why not? And I said, well, I've made backpacks, and I was skiing competitively, and I had these packs that I was using, and my teammates would come to me, and they'd say, hey, Bryce, where'd you get that pack? And I say, I made it. And they say, will you make one for me? And I'd say, sure, I'll make you one. So I'd make one for my teammates, and then it happened over and over again. So all this came together, this thought. This is my dad. He was giving me a little bit of money every month to live on, and I didn't like it. So I devised a plan. I'm going to start a company, and the only thing I know how to do is I know how to sew. So I can make things for people. So I devised a one-page business plan, and it said, Dad, will you loan me $1,000? I want to start a business. This is what I'm going to make. I'm going to make cosmetic bags, duffel bags, ski bags, marble bags, and I listed all these things, and then at the very bottom, running packs. And my dad, he was always supportive of me my whole entire life. He wrote me a check for $1,000, and I took this check, and I'm like, holy cow, that's a lot of money. I'm starting my first business. And I says, this is really cool. So I took the money, drove to the sewing machine supply place, bought a sewing machine, a commercial sewing machine. It cost me $960 for a sewing machine. And then I had $40 left over to buy some raw materials. Then I went home to my apartment. And this is me in Provo, Utah. I moved the sewing machine into my apartment. And I sewed my first backpack. It scared me to death because I'd never sewn on a commercial sewing machine before. And this was my first pack that I sewed, and it looks really horrible, and I'm embarrassed about it, but this is my first one that I sewed in my apartment in Provo. It allowed me to get the water bottle out. Pretty good, not great, but pretty good. And I sewed this in my apartment in Provo. At that point, I built some samples that looked a little bit better than this first one, and I put them on the wall in the running shoe store there. A guy came in the store, and he was a sales rep for ASIC Tiger. And he said, who made those backpacks? And I said, I did. He says, they're really cool. He says, do you need a sales rep? And I said, what's a sales rep? And he says, well, I take samples, I go around to my territory, I take your samples, and I get orders with outdoor and running stores in my territory. And I said, that's a great idea. I said, sure, I need a sales rep. So I took them off the wall and gave them to him. And it was about 3 weeks later that I was sitting in my apartment again, and I still can't figure out why, but it was a Sunday morning. The phone rang, and I'm like, hello? And they're like, is this Ultimate Direction? That was the name of my new company that I'd launched. Is this Ultimate Direction? And I said, yeah, Ultimate Direction, you know, this is it. And they said, well, this is the Ute Mountaineer in Aspen, Colorado. And we want 12 of this pack, 12 of this pack, and 12 of this pack. I had 3 styles. They wanted 12 of each. And I said, okay, awesome. So I wrote down all their information, and then I hung up the phone. I'm like, oh crap, what am I going to do now? How am I going to make these? You know, because I'm sitting here in my apartment just by myself. I had no idea about anything. I thought I was really smart. So I took the patterns. I took one of those Olaf cutters, you know, those rotary cutters, and one by one I cut out the 36, and then I got on the phone and I said, Mom, help. I'm working full time. I'm a college student, and now I've got to make 36 backpacks. And so she came down. It took us a whole week at night and her working the whole entire time to make those first 36 backpacks. I realized that there was a niche, that I had created a niche and there was a need for it in the marketplace. So I hired a few girls in the sewing department at college. I bought a few more sewing machines and I was able to self-fund all of that. And then I had them start making packs with me. And then the company was born. So that was Ultimate Direction. This is my first product line that I sewed in my apartment in Provo. And actually, it's a funny story. You know, in Provo, you're not supposed to have girls in your apartments, right? So my landlord, one day, you know, I'm in there and I have a few sewing machines and I have fabric and I have boxes of water balls sitting around. And one of the workers that was working for me, I was working another job so that I could pay her so that she could sew for me. Because I could sew, but it took a lot of time, so I needed more help. Well, the landlord knocks on the door and she answers the door. Where's Bryce? He's not here right now. Well, what are you doing here? And she says, well, I work for him. And she says, you're running a business out of this apartment? And she's like, yeah. And he called me up and I thought, oh no, I'm in big trouble. And he was a really nice guy. And he says, wow, that's really cool. I guess you need to start somewhere. Good luck. So I was really happy with that. I found a place to move into after that. This was my first product line. This was a trade show a few years down the road. If you know the outdoor retailer trade show in Salt Lake City. This was, again, my first product line, just all the packs we made. One of my first sales managers that started to work for me, and the company grew. We handmade everything. We made all the trade show exhibit, everything. We did it all by ourselves. We had big packs, small packs. They were all based on human performance. And the idea behind all of our products from day one have been, how can we have better performance for the athlete? So how can we make products like me setting records in the mountains? How can I make a product so it's easier to get at your fluids and your fuel on the go, so that you can run faster and perform better? So we did a ton of testing. Like, we were testing the water temperatures. We had a special tester here that we were testing fluid temperatures in the sun so that we would know what type of insulation worked better, because we knew that water was absorbed faster in the body at a certain temperature if you could keep that water at that temperature. So we were experimenting with ways to do that. We also did I did a lot of other things. This was the first time that I actually built a shoulder strap backpack. And I did it specifically with a friend of mine to try to set a record on the Wind River Range, doing the whole Wind River Range in Wyoming. We carried our own sleeping bag, a tent, all of our food, everything with us, 110 miles self-supported in 38 hours. So we built a product specifically for that, so that we could carry everything we needed, so that we were able to compete at that level. Long story, I left Provo, moved to Massachusetts. I figured I want to live on the East Coast. I can run this company anywhere. So I moved to Massachusetts. I moved into a warehouse. It was just me, myself, and I. My employees were no longer with me in Provo. I started sewing, and I had a lot of orders, and I got way behind. And so I ended up doing everything myself until I hired 3 Greek ladies that had worked in a sewing machine factory in Massachusetts. And it scared the heck out of me, because in Provo at the time I was paying my people $3.50 an hour. When I got to Massachusetts, they were starting people at McDonald's for $9 an hour. And I'm like, holy cow, how can I afford to do that? I'm going to go bankrupt in about 3 days. And so, but they were really, really good. Really good. This was a guy that did our cutting for us. This was our first large order. We had 1,000 pieces going to a company in Norway, actually, and so the company started to grow and grow and grow. We had a really hard time growing in Massachusetts because I found labor, but not enough labor. I needed a lot of labor. So then I opened up a factory and built a factory in Rexburg, Idaho. We built this factory up to over 100 employees. We made everything in the United States. and we called it our world-class production team. We did all the cutting, sewing, everything. This is my quality inspector. She was with me for like 15 years. This is actually how we learned to cut, where you stack cut things. There's 50 layers of fabric here, so every cut she makes, this is a razor blade that goes up and down really fast, and we're able to cut everything to mass produce things. This is a guy who worked for me. Every Friday we had a potluck, and he did all my maintenance. He built everything in the factory, and I loved the factory environment. I loved the people. I loved working with them. But still, we were way behind on production, so we opened a second factory. This factory was in South Dakota. We hired 100 people in South Dakota, and we had another sewing factory in South Dakota. The snow was so deep in South Dakota, though, even to put our sign on the side of the building, we could walk up the snowdrift and just mount it on. But it was still a lot of fun. The people were amazing. We struggled a lot keeping up with production. The company was growing very quickly. We were also struggling because at the time, most of our competition was taking their manufacturing offshore. This would have been around 2000, 2001, 2002, in that time frame. They were taking their manufacturing offshore to Asia. So our costs were going up like this, and then because we had struggled so much keeping up with production with our company, all the competition started to come in, and they started copying us. We had a few patents, but they were still copying us. So it was a real struggle for us. So probably the hardest decision I had to make in my life was to actually shut down the factories. And I actually sold my first company, Ultimate Direction, because I honestly didn't have enough money to shift all the manufacturing from the United States to Asia and then get the company going again. So I sold it to another company, worked for them for a few years, and this was probably one of the saddest days of my life. These were some of my managers in South Dakota. Population 3,000, we had 100 employees there. We were by far the largest employer in the town. The grocery store owner called me before we shut the factory down and said, "You can't shut the factory down, we'll go out of business." And it broke my heart because I love people. And these people will always have a soft spot in my heart for me, all of my people that I've employed over the years. But I've also loved business. Through the process of all this, back to my college time, I learned so much. In my college years, I started taking classes, and I had this desire to learn more and more and more and more. I took accounting classes, marketing classes, photography classes, pattern making classes. I took everything possible that I thought that I would need to run my business. And they all helped, and it all worked. Even calculus helped in a sewing business because of pattern making and angles and curves and seam allowances and all that stuff that you need to do. At that point, the company that purchased us shifted the manufacturing offshore to the Philippines. I love the people of the Philippines as well too, but I still had a soft spot in my heart for all the U.S. manufacturing. I was in the Philippines for 13 years, and then we have since been to Vietnam for quite a while as well now too. So all Asian manufacturing. Over this time, I started Ultimate Direction, then I next started Stat Packs Company, medical bags, and then I started Click Elite, which is a camera bag company, which I eventually sold. Stat Packs, I started with a partner. He took Stat Packs, and it's still running today, a beautiful brand, if any of you are in the EMS medical industry. And then we started UltrAspire, which is my current brand that I've been doing for many years now, is UltrAspire. And it still has remained the same, but the strategies have always been the same for all three of these brands. And that has been top-down marketing, where you go after the top percent, the elite in each category. We went after the paramedics, the top paramedics that are out there fighting. We went to the top photographers, adventure photographers. We went to the top athletes. Created products, niche products that are very specialized specifically for them, and then created a name brand around that, which with the name brand, it was able to filter down to the lower tiers of marketing. So now with UltrAspire, we have a whole bunch of products ranging from large to small, and it's just really, really, really a fun product line. It's really my passion. one of the things I want to get across to you today is if you love what you do, you will love going to work. It's not like going to work for me, because I love what I do and I love the people that I work with. So one of the things that I've done, and one of the ways we've been successful, is I've been doing this for so long. Not only do I still compete myself in athletics, but I work with some of the top athletes in the world. This is a very niche market. This is ultra running. So Karl Meltzer, I've known him for about 25 years. He's won over 50 100-mile races. He has won more 100-mile races than any person in history. He comes to my office every few months. We sit down together and we work on product. So this is a picture of me and Karl working together. Karl goes out and he wins races. He's very well known. People say, hey, I want to wear the same pack that Karl wears. So then it kind of filters down to the more recreational people. This is Magdalena Boulay, 2008 Olympian in the marathon for the United States of America. She's originally from Poland. Her and I have been friends for more than 20 years now. Magda is an amazing person. Any of you know GU Energy Food, GU? Magda is now the president of GU. She's a food scientist. She's now the president of GU. Anyway, I've worked with Magda for a really long time. This is what I love to do. I love talking to the athletes. What problems are you having with the pack? What do we need to change? Where is it rubbing? How is it not working for you? How can we make it better? How can we make it faster for you to get your fluids? How can we make it faster in the aid station so that you're able to get through the aid station faster so that you can compete at a higher level? So I built this sample for her. She took this prototype and used it to win the Marathon des Sables across the Sahara Desert. It's a 5-day stage race across the desert. You have to carry everything with you except for your water they give you in the aid stations for the 5 days. And she wore that prototype, won the race. This is me in my workshop in St. George. This is what I spend my time doing now. I've kind of gone full circle. I've gone from sewing, making patterns, to running a company, to developing a company, to managing people, to selling a company. Now I have beautiful people that work with me, 2 of them SUU students. One is my president of the company now, and one of them is our vice president of marketing. And that allows me to focus on what my passion is, which is developing products. This is what happens. I start with a basic shape, and then I add to it. I had a guy named Jeff Browning come to me. He's also known as Bronco Billy, which I'll show you here in a minute. Bronco Billy came to me and he said, I need a pack that I can do X, Y, and Z with. He says, I want to run the rim to rim to rim to rim to rim in the Grand Canyon in one push. And I need a pack that can do that. We sat down at my kitchen table. He took a napkin out, and it really happened. And he said, what if we do this? And I said, that's a great idea. And then I says, how about if we do this? How are you going to carry your poles? He wanted trekking poles to put on the back. How are you going to carry your trekking poles? How are you going to get them on and off fast? I got to carry 4 water bottles. How are you going to carry your 4 water bottles to get down to Phantom Ranch? We went through all this. 2 weeks later, I built a sample for him. Here's the sample, and he set a record on the rim to rim to rim to rim to rim. This is Jeff Browning, a.k.a. Bronco Billy. And by the way, he's the 2nd winningest 100-miler of all time. Lives in Flagstaff now, is a wonderful man, has a family, just a beautiful man. He's a coach and a graphic artist. So this is a video showing the video. And by the way, Jeff Browning just won a 240-mile race called the Moab 240. And he won it in this pack, this is the actual production version of the big Bronco. And he won it in this pack. And let's see if I can get this to work. Yeah, here we go. This is kind of some of the marketing materials we used to show what you can wear in our packs. Everything on the go. He wanted to be able to get everything out without taking the pack off. So that is the pack that he just won the Moab 240 on. That is the pack that he did the double crossing. That's not the actual one. He actually used my prototype in the double crossing. That's how we develop products. We start with the elite, and then it filters down. Now, where my real joy comes You know how I told you about how Sunday afternoon I would go and I would sew stuff on Sunday afternoon? Well, I still have that passion. And so now I have 8 grandkids. And so every one of my grandkids, I build them a backpack. So their first backpack comes from Grandpa that I build at the workshop on Sunday afternoon. So I absolutely love what I do. I love spending time outside with my grandkids. My wife and I, we love rock climbing, we love trail running, we love spending time outside with the kids, and they have learned to love the outdoors as well too. This is my wife. She's sitting here right now, Vanessa. This is in Snow Canyon State Park, and that's me. We're doing a climb called Leopard Skin. And I have really established for myself, with the help of my wife, we've done this together, a career that allows me to merge passion and business in the same. Because every single time I go out, I'm doing business. And that's rare. But I'm very, very fortunate with that. So we spend a lot of time out. We trail run a ton, mountain bike, rock climb mostly. So I have 3 tips, and then after this I'll open it up to questions, okay? 3 tips that I think helped me and has helped me over the years. Tip number 1, you have to develop a positive attitude towards learning. And I have to admit, when I first went to college, I was the one that was staying up half the night cramming for the test. I would forget it the day after the test, and then I'd go on to the next test. And I was just kind of going through college like this. And as soon as I started my own company, it was almost a live or die situation where I knew that I had to learn, because I had to learn things because I didn't really know what I was doing. And after I developed that love for learning, I continue to learn. A real quick story and part of this learning process. Even recently with the COVID pandemic, I had to reinvent myself. And so through the course of your life, even though I'm at the time where I should start thinking about retiring and stuff like that, I had to reinvent myself. You guys will have to reinvent yourself over and over and over again, and we do that through learning. So you have to be able to learn the rest of your life. Well, for me, I had traveled to Asia, and I'd been traveling to Asia for like 20 years. I'd been traveling to Asia. My routine was I'd do a drawing on the computer, send the drawing to the factory, then I would show up and spend 2 weeks at the factory, and I would wait there while they would sew a sample together for me. Then I would take the sample, come back, give it to one of the athletes, have them test it, and then I would make comments on it, and then I'd send it to the factory, and then they would make, 2 months later, I'd get another sample back, and it was really slow process, but I'd been doing it for a long time, and it worked. But with COVID, no more travel. What we wanted to do as a company, though, because we're a small brand compared to other companies, we wanted to continue that R&D cycle going. So I went back to my grassroots and I said, I can do the patterns, I can do the samples, I can make the samples. And that's how I got into that. So I learned how to make patterns on the computer. I made patterns, I printed them out, you saw the samples that I make. I started making all my samples. I could turn samples in 2 or 3 days sometimes, making them myself in my operation. Then I take the patterns that are generated on the computer, I email them to the factory, and I send them a finished sample that's ready to go because it's already been tested. Jeff Browning, we went through 5 revisions before he got a pack that was ready for market. We did it all in St. George. And then we send a finished sample off, they duplicate it, and it's ready for production to go into production instantly. We sped up the process immensely. And as far as I know, we are the only company in this industry that can do that. Because most people use artists to do the drawings, and they use factories in Asia to develop the samples. We don't do that. We make them right here. So that, develop a positive attitude towards learning. It's a lifelong process. I go through a book every couple of weeks, and they're usually self-help books, performance books, business books, things like that, that will help you continue to grow and help you to continue to stay at the top of your field. And I read a study once at Harvard University that said that if you will spend an hour a week in your field studying and learning and growing, it's just a matter of a few years and you'll be the top of your field. And so learning has to be ingrained in us to continue on for the rest of our lives. Enjoy the process, tip number 2. We have to enjoy what we're doing. So many people get into a career to make money because their parents wanted them to do it and things like that. Well, every step along the way there's going to be a challenge. And how we tackle those challenges and how we face those challenges and how we look at those challenges, you have to learn to enjoy it. I've been with people before where they're always saying, well, as soon as we do this, as soon as we do this, as soon as I get out of college, I'll be happy. No, be happy today. It's a choice. It's a choice. We have to enjoy the process along the way that we're going through. And if we can do that, then the value and quality of our life will be much better. So enjoy the process that you're going through. College is a process. Tip number 3, learn to love your career. Don't worry if you haven't chosen a career right when you're a freshman in college. Dabble a little bit, but continue to explore. Make sure that you have this as a thing that you want to learn to love your career. And I do love my career. And we plan on retiring, but I plan on never fully retiring because I plan on continuing to develop products, continue to make things, and then have people help me run the company so that I can do what I love, which is the product development. Going from concept to reality. Concept to reality. It comes into your mind, you think about it, you figure out how to do it, and then it becomes a reality. I love what I do, and I hope that you guys can too. So last, and then we'll turn it over to questions. I had somebody, they gave a speech, and this would have been back in 1981, he gave a speech. And he said, when you want a thing bad enough, and I'll tell you the whole quote in a minute, he says, you'll get it. And so I'm going to give you that quote. And the reality is, it's not easy. What I've done is not easy. There's been a lot of challenges. Starting your own company is not easy. But if you are persistent and pursue it, you'll be able to do it. So here's the quote. When you want a thing bad enough to go out and fight for it, to work day and night for it, to give up your peace and your sleep and your time for it, if only the desire makes your aim strong enough, never to tire of it, if life seems all empty and useless without it, and all that you dream and you scheme is about it, if gladly you'll sweat for it, fret for it, plan for it, pray with all your strength for it, if you will simply go after the thing that you want with all your capacity, strength and sagacity, faith, hope, and confidence, stern pertinacity, if neither poverty nor cold nor famish or bane of body or brain can turn you away from the thing that you want, if dogged and grim you beseech and beset it, you'll get it. So, I can tell you, business is worth it. It's fun. You work for yourself, but it's not easy. But you can orchestrate a life for yourself that you will have a really, really good career and a really good life. Thank you very much. Questions? Yes.
What was like a moment that happened in the beginning? Like, were there any moments when you were like, okay, I don't want to do this. This is too hard. And like, what helped you get over that moment and keep pushing forward?
Really good question. She said, were there any moments along the way that you've questioned whether you've done the right thing or not? And early on, I would say no, there wasn't. I had so much passion, so much drive, and I enjoyed the process so much. And I realized that I loved learning, but I loved learning what I wanted to learn. And that was just me. And so because of that, I was learning so much, starting my own business from scratch, not knowing anything about it, and just figuring it out. But later, when we've had some struggles, when I had to sell the company, things like that, those were hard. Those were really hard time, a lot of sleepless nights. And I think that one of my faults, one of my qualities, one of my faults is that I'm a people person. And I like people. And I have a soft heart. And the thought of having to make a hard business decision for the benefit of the business was really difficult on me. And so I think from that standpoint, I've thought before maybe I should have been a doctor because I like to help people. But then I have doctor friends that run with me and they say, no, your lifestyle is really good because everything you do is what you like to do. So yes, that does happen for sure. Good question. You do question it once in a while. Anybody else?
I'm sure there's more questions.
Yes.
When you set the record, did you turn around at the top immediately?
Yes.
So you didn't even like take in the view or anything?
Well, you do. Have you climbed the Grand before? Yeah, so the Grand Teton, obviously, the view is incredible. The question was, did I turn around and look at the view? So at the time, what it was, you would carry this little trail registry that you would check in. And I left the trail registry on top because you'd check in with the rangers. And then I had somebody else carry it down. That's how I verified that I summited. But all I did was I touched the top. There's a rock cairn on top. And I did. I just did a 360 spin around, and then I was down. But it took me from the summit to do those 8 miles down. It took me an hour and 13 minutes, including all the down climbing and all the rock stuff. So it's, I don't know, if those of you that are runners, it's pretty fast. My wife and I climb it. We go up there and we're 15 hours to do it now. And we still do it, but it's like, holy cow. It's like, did I really do that in 3 hours, you know? So it's kind of that's an aha moment when you realize that you are getting a little bit older. But not only getting a little older, and I'm still active, but I think that your fear factor and your responsibility factor goes way up, so you don't take as many risks. So good question, though. Anything else? Yes?
You had said that you like to read and stuff just to continue gaining knowledge. What are some of your favorite books?
The book that I just finished this last week is called The Elite Minds by Stan Beecham. And it's really a athletic performance book, but it's really, really business mind based. And it goes into just kind of the psychology behind everything. I'm volunteer coach a cross-country team in Idaho, and so I'm trying to help those kids get over some mind blocks. But I'm also having our business people read it as well too, because I think it's really good for business. And then last week also I finished one called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I really like that book. He's a concentration camp. And the whole idea behind his book is you can choose, no matter what circumstances you live in, you're free to choose how you respond to those circumstances. That's a really good book. One that I've also recently read, which is really, really important, I think, and a hard business lesson for me to learn. I don't remember the author, but the book is Nail It and Scale It. And the idea behind the book is don't go too big too fast. You can see what I did here. I start with 1 sewing machine, then 4 sewing machines, then 100 sewing machines, you know, and along the way, I had to make sure that my model worked well before I went big. Too many people, when they start a business, they will say, I need an investor. I need somebody to give me $1 million. And I can do this with it. And then they'll squander it all away on social media and different things, and they'll start taking a high salary themselves. You know, I didn't take a salary for a long time. I was working another job to get the business going. So nail it and scale it. The whole idea behind it is start small, make sure that your model is perfect, test the model with people around you, friends, go to some stores, test it with some people, and then once the proof of concept has come, then you scale it, and you know that it can go big. So that's a really good one too. Okay.
Are you wholesaling your products directly to consumers, or are you working through department stores?
Yes, very, very good question. How are we selling our products? Okay. 40% of our business is international. We sell through distributors, and the distributors are specialty sporting goods or run distributors. We're in 35 countries right now. And that's 40% of our business. 40% of our business is through independent specialty stores, running stores, outdoor stores. The biggest would be like an REI, something like that, stores in the United States, so 40%. 20% is online, direct online through our own website. The one thing you have to be really careful with if you use a model like ours is you have to make sure that your pricing is consistent across the board, because some people, for example, if you start an online account and you sell it yourself, you need to sell it at the same price that the stores are selling it for, so that the stores will still buy from you. So that's how we distribute.
Okay.